Joining us today, not only we have the speakers from the morning session, but also we have our moderator here with us, and please welcome her on stage. And she is Professor Christine Low, SBS JP, Chief Development Strategist, Institute for the Environment, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Thank you for being here, Professor Low. And now we would like to invite our following speakers to join us back on stage, and they are Ms. Audrey Nagent. Please welcome Mr. Ken Chu, Engineer Michael Fong, Engineer Dr. Conrad Wong. Welcome, and please be seated. Thank you. And now over to you, Professor Low.
Right, well, thank you very much. And as Conrad said, we know everybody is hungry. And you know, I'm restricted to really asking that one question to each of them. So I hope you will agree that I've picked some important questions. So Audrey, let me come to you first.
Okay.
Thank you for coming to Hong Kong. I think today, I know you've walked around the city, so you see the topography, our buildings, and so on. And you've heard from actually a good group of presenters. They've given you a picture of the ambition and the problems we have and the challenges we need to go ahead with. You shared with us the idea of the buildings breakthrough, and you've walked around the city. So give us a message of what you think we can contribute.
I think there's an awful lot that you can contribute and an awful lot that the city is already doing to actually drive sustainability, even from the presentations that I've heard this morning. You know, my message is always to come with greater policy ambition, to look at energy efficiency, to the transfer to renewables, the importance of a sustainable built environment. So I'm feeling quite enthusiastic about the messages I've heard this morning in terms of the policy change, and also from the youth that we've heard from as well about, you know, this idea and the fact that Hong Kong is such a global city, you know, where we can actually, you can use what you're doing in your city to come to the global stage, to come to COP, to talk about what you're doing, because everything in terms of the policy changes, the urban planning that you presented, that was amazing. So I'm really enthusiastic. I guess one thing that always strikes me, there's a huge amount of buildings and floor space still to be built. So I guess my message would be also to consider the embodied carbon impact of that. So what is the impact of the materials, the transportation to sites, and how can we reduce the overall embodied impact? That's always a message I bring whenever we're talking about a lot of new growth. And there's also maybe an interesting opportunity, because from conversations I've been having, some of the challenges I've been hearing about is this concept of double aging, I think was how it was presented to me. So an aging population, but also aging buildings. So how can we look at, you know, the maintenance of that? There's obviously a lot of skyscrapers here. Maybe there's a role for Hong Kong to figure out how do you actually tackle that aging building population, especially when it comes to skyscrapers, because we have that problem in Europe, but they're not really skyscrapers. So that would be my kind of key takeaways, but I'm really enthusiastic after what I've heard.
Right, well, Audrey, I'm glad you brought up the aging buildings. So I think in Hong Kong, we know that we have lots of new things coming, but of course, we do have aging infrastructure and aging buildings, and retrofitting existing buildings is actually also a big business, but it's more difficult everywhere. So I'm going to come to Michael. And Michael, I explain who you are to Audrey. And the audience here know you very well. You are very influential because you build everything in the public sector. And CEDD is actually, I think, one of the most amazing departments in government. You shared with us maps. You talked about Northern Metropolis and Khao Yai Jiao, but of course, there's actually more. There are actually more than those two great projects. So the first point is, you know, Hong Kong is going to have all these people are your stakeholders, and there's actually more business than all of us can handle, right? Coming from public and private sector. But I think the professionals in Hong Kong, including the ones for green buildings, because you are great professionals, you always have, I mean, the professionals have a great yearning to help. So in the next 20 years, Hong Kong has to deliver on all these amazing projects. How do you think you might, in addition to what you need to do in government, to really develop the kind of relationship and platforms and methods to get all these people and many more, including young people, to help us co-develop and co-learn? Because we all don't wake up knowing exactly what to do, and we're going into the climate era where everything has to be done better. Conrad also reminded us that we can't do it without a lot of digitalization. So maybe there are 3 aging issues, right? We also need to revive ourselves using technology. So perhaps, Michael, how can we all be more helpful to you?
So my response will be short. So there's one word that's mentioned by almost all the speakers this morning, is collaboration. Collaboration to me is very, very important, because the governments alone cannot do the job just by ourselves. We need to have the collaboration with the industry or with the people of Hong Kong as a whole. So actually, when we taking forward the Kao Yichao Artificial Islands as well as the Northern Metropolis, the government has been trying hard, but perhaps not hard enough. It's trying hard to outreach to the society. Particularly, our focus is on the younger generation, the young professionals. All those young professionals here in this room is our focus group, actually, because in taking forward and planning, design and construct, and then to realize all these amazing projects will take at least 20 to 30 years time to build. So it will be those young professionals or young people in Hong Kong that will benefit from this implementation of these projects, and they are the communities that you will be living, working, and playing at the end of the day. So I'm very, very eager to have this, the voices from the younger generations in the society to give us feedback, to give us ideas, to give us suggestions on how we can plan and implement these projects in a way that will benefit all of you and our future generation as well.
Well, Michael, maybe I can make a small suggestions, because actually I know so many present company as well as people from other professional groups want so much to really help. But perhaps what we can do is gather them together and agree on some kind of platform and structure where people can work more closely with you to offer ideas, including some of the younger professionals for the longer term. Conrad, you're one of the most fun people to work with because, Conrad's always ahead of the curve, right? And he's showing us his passion for use of technology. And you're also a developer in Hong Kong, and you've actually developed some of the most innovative buildings on many fronts. You want to talk to us today about the well-being of the worker. You want to reduce or even eliminate accidents. So that's, I think everybody agrees with that. I mean, you talked about we've had some bad accidents lately. So where is Hong Kong compared to other advanced economy with construction accidents? And to improve, to do some of the things that you are already doing, who should really be helping to lead the charge?
This is not a very easy question to answer, because when I was the chairman of the Safety and Health Council, we attend many international conferences about safety. Unfortunately, the definition of accidents cannot be unified. In Hong Kong, we used to adopt a definition that if the doctor gives 3 days sick leaves for the worker get injured, then we count it as a reportable accident. But some regions say maybe 1 day, some regions say go to hospital, and some even don't count the importation of labors. So that in itself, from a quantitative point of view, is difficult. But I think overall in Hong Kong recently, I'm very glad to see a lot of young people, the startups, using different technology to try to improve safety. I mean, that's really encouraging. I think that is something that we really should focus more and take lead in the world, because I'm sure if the technology can be developed and used in Hong Kong, have huge market in China and this Southeast Asia. So I think I'm looking at the young people there, they should be, more focused on the young people and their talent, how to nurture them.
Well, maybe I can press you a little bit here, because of course for younger people, using the technology is, just comes very naturally. But for us to actually get more companies, right, to actually adopt this kind of technology, where can we make a better start? I mean, you are all in, I know that. But how can we get more people to do that?
I think the government now put a lot of emphasis on construction safety, and that safety record impacts every contractor's livelihood. And so that's providing a very good environment for us to improve construction safety. But I think if we can nurture some young people, say, groom the next Li Ka-shing on technologies, okay? And they will say, wow, you're not making money from product development, but really truly making a mark in technologies. Then they will attract more people to adopt this. Hong Kong is, I think, very, a lot of entrepreneurship around in Hong Kong, we still do. And so if we can demonstrate that, a couple of companies listed in Hong Kong Stock Exchange or NASDAQ, for example, I think that will encourage more people to come and join in.
Michael, maybe you want to talk to the government, give them another job, right, to kind of get all this going. Now, Ken, you and I meet a lot. Ken and I meet a lot in finance gatherings, right? And we've met over, I think, the last 2 or 3 years. We've done so much, talking on panels and so on relating to green finance. So I'm very glad to hear today you've shared with us, for example, OPARC, that you're actually capturing the credit, and the credits can then be used. And I suspect that you're also listening to Michael, and all these projects there, there's potentially, both in the public and the private sector, carbon credits to be captured. And it's important because it helps to lower the cost of very expensive projects. So you have a lot of potentials, but you're not yet having a lot of trade. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Thanks. Actually, Christine bring up a very, very important point, is why we want to cite OPARC, why we want to cite the resource company, is because going back to the cost question, it's not a simple formula, right? There are two sides of the equation. One is about opportunity. One is about the cost. Solely going back to the usage of credit, if we just look into a transaction, it is a cost because you pay, right? However, I think there are a lot of companies, and we spoke a lot and see out of this ESG, the E, right? And in particular, climate, where we can capture the opportunity by doing better in the ESG space, especially in the E. And obviously, the use cases that not just myself, but like Commissioner Wong has also shared, is one, to showcase the actions actually taken. And second one, there are indeed opportunities, not just focusing on the cost pay on the credit, but also holistically, what are the drawbacks, what are the environmental attribute, what are the commercial value that can bring back. We need to strive a balance across all this. I think that is one of the dimensions that we look into the question. Now, your next point you asked about, like, the trades. Of course, from exchange perspective, we always care about the volume. Christine, you were in the system as well. I think the carbon is a slightly different. I think there are a couple of things very, very interesting. I think as myself, like a P license holder in the driving space, is in carbon. Firstly, carbon is finance, but not finance, because it involves a lot of science. The methodology involves how do we want to quantify the emission, avoid or remove, for example. So it's a collaboration, it's a cross-discipline action. So just measuring the volume may not address the exact the point. even in exchange or volume perspective, we look into open interest and things. But I think there are a couple of things in carbon that we can take a look. One, issuance. It could be a reflection of the confidence of the market. Second one, retirement. How many people really use it than just hold it, right? There are many metrics that I think in this very nascent market, we can still look into it. Of course, then in terms of transaction, from core climate perspective, we deem to dedicate to look for long-term buyers like the one that we sign a letter of intent, but there are long journey to go, especially in terms of education.
Can I ask you and Audrey maybe the same question, right? I mean, building retrofits, new builds, tremendous projects that you've heard about, I mean, they do cost money. And generally, when we have this kind of gathering, it's really great that, Ken, that you're here, because normally we have, you know, engineers and architects and planners all talking to each other, and, you know, we talk about great projects and solutions, but the money people are not here. Now, we're very fortunate to have a government that is still debt-free, right? You know, I know the financial secretary complains about having less money, but we are incredibly fortunate in Hong Kong that we are debt-free. Right? So we've generally, Michael, right? You know, in a way, Hong Kong has paid cash for many of the projects, but we're now going into green bonds and so on. Now, it's an inspiration to have you here today, first finance person. Do you think, Ken, it would be good if we had more discussions where the hardware people and the money people can actually spend a bit more time, you know, reflecting on really where the opportunities are and how can we make that happen? And then maybe Audrey, you can have the last word by thinking, you know, money's needed all over the world. And whether you've seen some platforms or some ways elsewhere where we can bring money talk into hardware projects. Ken, you go first.
Okay, first of all, I declare that I'm not a money guy, purely. My background is math and computer science. I'm still struggling with the AIoT things. So the good thing, I mean, today's platform is marvelous. I think it's very critical, especially when I mentioned that when we look into environment, it's a cross-discipline subject. And I cited an example from carbon credit, from environmental perspective, from the bureau perspective, probably the focus will be whether or not the retirement of credit will hit the NDC, for example. From a finance perspective, the guy will not asking about NDC. They will talk about, okay, can the settlement be done properly, right? Can we price it properly? Now, I think that the key function of like this kind of forum is very important to emphasize on this cross-discipline nature of many things, especially in the ESG space. Only when we can bring all the experts together and you gather together with a proper collaboration, like what just mentioned, collaboration, understanding, because the pain points, the focus are very different. Only when we can put them together, we can make it happen. Otherwise, it's very difficult.
Audrey, the last word.
Thanks.
Before lunch.
I'll be quick. I'm not a finance expert, so that will help with me not being quick. But I think one of the conversations that we've had at World GBC and within our network is we do that collaboration. A lot of the time the finance folk are missing, but we are seeing that change. We're seeing a lot, like the Climate Bonds Initiative, for example, they're doing a lot of work on, you know, how do you access to finance? There's a lot of talk now about transition risk. In Europe, we are doing a lot of work on the EU taxonomy, which is going this kind of guiding framework for where sustainable investments should go. So I think that conversation is really, really moving along at pace, but I still think there's more room to bring the finance guys in to speak to the other stakeholders and speak in a language that people understand. I think that's really, really important. But there are definitely positive signs of change, but getting those accessing the money that is there is still a challenge, but there is new tools like green mortgages, the EU taxonomy, and other rent in Europe. We talk a lot about accessing finance for innovation. So there are platforms available, but really the next step is to really bring the finance community in the room with all of the stakeholders, we collaborate across the value chain so that we can unlock that and unlock it at scale. So I'll stop there for lunch.
Well, terrific. There's a lot of work to do. I think people are enthusiastic. Hong Kong is both a big city and a small city because we're geographically small. We can have 5 meetings a day, right? You know, that's not unusual. So let's get on with it. We know people across industries and sectors, and perhaps we just need some mechanism who understands how to organize these things to help us, to bring us together so we can have better collaboration. Please put your hands together to thank the panel.
Yeah, thank you once again to our panelists and also to Professor Low for moderating for us. Please stand together for a photo before we go. Yes, shall we? Yes, let's take a photo together. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a big round of applause to this panel, please. Really fruitful discussions. And yes, may we have Architect Choi and Dr. Zheng to join our panelists here on stage for this photo. That's wonderful. Let's smile for the camera. A lot of takeaways from this panel, collaboration, and really, it's time to take action. We need to know the importance of working together to help make our city more sustainable. That's wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Please return to your seats and be seated. Thank you again.